During the pandemic lockdown, D&D gained a lot of new players, and one of them was subject to a player who just couldn't stop trying to center herself constantly. But first, a message from today's sponsor. No adventure is complete without stunning maps, jaw-dropping scenes, and tokens so good a crab can use them. That's where Chepeku comes in. Right now, you can subscribe to the complete fantasy bundle at chepeku.com and get maps, scenes, and tokens. That's thousands of high-res battle maps, gorgeous painted scenes, animated goodness, hand-drawn tokens, and even a token builder so you can cook up your own crustaceous creations. New content drops every week. Virtual tabletop ready for Roll20, Foundry, Alchemy, you name it. So scuttle on over to chepeku.com and grab the complete fantasy bundle for the best price. Your players will thank you, your DM will thank you, even this crab thanks you. And hey, if you just want a single map, they got that too at chepeku.com/store. So click the link in the description, I will see you there. Like many, I got into D&D during the pandemic through Discord. In our server, one of the guys wanted to try his hand at DMing and asked around if anyone would be interested. And I jumped aboard. Having played a bard in my first campaign, I decided to try it again, but the DM told me someone else had already created a bard character and would like some diversity. I instead went for a druid. Added to the party was a cleric and a rogue. A paladin joined later, but it was late in the campaign. We started at level 1, running a heavily modified and homebrewed version of the Waterdeep Heist module. Our DM took pains to weave our character backstory into the campaign itself, giving the cleric personal ties with the big bad evil guy, and gave the bard a personal vendetta with one of the noble families in Waterdeep. Stuff like that. Each of us had a personal hook in the story, but it was clear that the cleric was something of a main character, since she had a history with the BBEG. This was perfectly fine with the rest of us, as this was all of our first experience playing 5e except for cleric, so cleric running point made sense. To most of us. Not Bard. Bard thought she was the main character and was the driving force of the campaign. It did not help that her bard was the most dramatic creature to ever exist. I didn't particularly like the bard character, but it was so much more how the player played her. Let me give some examples of stuff that she, out of character, should not have directed her character to do. Okay, can I be honest real quick? I'm okay with this being one of my questionable takes, but I don't really have a problem with one character clearly being the most central figure in the story. Like, it can be an issue if you aren't smart about it, but this alone does not inherently make the game any worse, so long as the gameplay and spotlight are equally distributed. In D&D, problems only arrive when the narrative centrality becomes mechanical or spotlight dominance, and it becomes clear that everyone else is just there to orbit the main character rather than play a major role in the story. You can just say that this character has the deepest tie to the big bad, and the MacGuffin belongs to him. That narratively centers a character, but aside from that, you can run the game normally and nobody will think twice about it. Anyways, strike one. She interrupted every character encounter if someone wasn't doing well, and she used blunt force charisma to get what she wanted. As a bard and a half-elf, her charisma stat was so outrageous that she literally didn't have to use any of her other stats. I hate to interrupt so soon, but this is outrageous. The bard is not even at fault for this one. Let me explain. If the player rolls skill checks and those skill checks routinely solve problems, and it isn't something game-breaking or cheesy, they are obviously going to continue doing that. The bottom line is, it works. The bard would have to deliberately nerf herself by trying other things. So I read this, and my thought isn't, why is the bard continuing to roll charisma checks? My thought is, how is the game being run that allows this to be a viable method? From my point of view, this is more that the DM needs to learn than the bard being in the wrong. So let's talk about the DM. Now, well-meaning people would tell the DM to just create scenarios where charisma doesn't work. This is about half of the picture. You should include this in your DMing playbook, but also add scenarios where a high charisma check would help, but not completely solve. Here's an example. The party is waylaid by a band of goblins. The charmer attempts to persuade or intimidate them into leaving, and it works, but only on some of them. Combat continues regardless. Also, keep a few charisma-based encounters so that the bard can still shine on her own, help others, and sometimes have to do without a silver tongue. I'm not saying that the DM is bad or that this is some huge fault, but this is just a common trap for new DMs. I've been there too, and this is how a lot of DMs shake things up. Anyways, roll post. Strike 2, she inserted her bardness everywhere we went. She wanted to play for money at every inn, every circus we passed, every event we went to. She took her stupid lute and wanted to have a performance. She wanted to sing a song of rest after a combat encounter we had at 4 in the morning in bandit-infested woods, instead of staying quiet and trying to restart our long rest. Alright, stop the post again. I really don't like pushing back against the OP of any story, really. I just like to take it for what it is, but isn't this just roleplay? I get that Bard might be really annoying and this adds to that, but from a reader's point of view, this just sounds like what a Bard does. They're performers. Unless what OP is saying is that it's often completely out of place and frequently breaks into other people's moments so that Bard can sing songs and perform, then that's really out of line. There's a time and a place. Roll post. Strike 3, disseminating information she had discovered had to be given out on her terms. There were times we asked her outright for backstory information or information she had that we knew out of character that Bard refused to share with the rest of the party because mystique? I don't know. She did this with her personal backstory, information she had gained when separate from the party, or from succeeding on checks and eavesdropping on conversations in a language she understood, but we didn't. And it was such a pain. Okay. This is another gray area. When it comes to backstory information, I think that it should be revealed on the character's own time. There could be a reason to withhold personal information, a big reveal or a plot twist, or just not wanting to reveal all of your character all at once. But when it's imperative campaign information or things that will advance the quest, out with it. That's the time to share it. So I feel like Strike 3 is both valid and a little bit nitpicky. I feel like some of that maybe didn't have to be there. Anyways, where were we? Strike 4. We were gifted a piece of property that was haunted. Bard invited the ghost to stay without consulting the rest of us, and my character, Paladin, and Cleric were not fond of the arrangement for reasons related to our respective classes. But she just decided that it got to live in our house rent-free. Strike 5. I'm fairly confident she fudged her rolls. I eventually got to the point where I kept track of everybody's rolls, and for 7 consecutive weeks, she never rolled below a 12 on anything except for a single time she didn't want to assist someone in combat and rolled a nat 1. This meant she succeeded every combat strike, every spell, every character encounter, which, since she forced herself to the front, left very little for the rest of us to do. Paladin and Rogue were the worst victims of this because Cleric and I were better at standing up for ourselves. Alright, this is where it gets interesting. When it comes to cheating allegations, there are levels to this. We know that they're playing online, so if Bard is using an online roller, like in Virtual Tabletop or a Discord bot where you click a button and it spits a number out in front of God and everybody, there's a near 0% chance of cheating, unless admin tools or hacks are at play. But let's be real, that's an incredibly unlikely scenario in almost every occasion. Now, the most likely cheating scenario is if they were playing online with off-screen physical dice. Then I would say that, based on what we know about the spotlight hogging and the need to be important, yes, this does sound like a cheating situation. Roll post. Strike 6. She did not pay attention during combat and always waited until her turn to determine her action and would try improvised weapons, and then haggle with the DM to do things like make a flamethrower out of a perfume sprayer and a torch. And finally, Strike 7. She openly criticized an out-of-character joke I would make about asking the DM if NPCs were hot, but every time she was dealing with a male NPC who was not a gnome or a halfling, she immediately went for the flirty interactions to try and get what she wanted. Batting eyelashes, the bend and snap, etc. Thirst was only inappropriate if it came from me, not her. Stop the post because I'm just confused. This hypocrisy is it's too blatant. It's too specifically pointed. It's hard for me to register how someone could be so aware of others and so blind to themselves. I want to know, is the issue the tone of OP's joke, the context in which it was made, or is this just a case of selective moralizing? Like, you sir, you have no right to comment on a woman's appearance. It's unacceptable and wrong. But it's okay for me to manipulate and use people. It's different when I do it, because I have reasons. I wasn't there, so I could be way off. It could just be something entirely different, but I think it's a fair guess as any. Now the strikes are out of the way, let's get to the real meat of the story. About 3/4 of the way through the campaign, she realized all the other characters hated Bard, so she decided to have the Bard leave and introduce a new character, Barbarian. I liked Barbarian better, but this player was still so obsessed with being part of the main story that she made her Barbarian's backstory intertwined with the BBEG, as she was a direct victim of his looking for revenge. I don't know why the DM let her do that, as it only fed her main character syndrome worse. During the final battle, Cleric landed a hit that basically incapacitated the BBEG, a necromancer with some kind of powerful tome and possessed by a devil, leaving my character to deliver the final blow, which I did, decapitating him and ending combat. Barbarian immediately ran up and grabbed the necromancer's head out of my hands, wanting to take it as a trophy. Forget the cleric's story, forget that I made the final blow, she wanted the vengeance and the bounty. I was livid, but I didn't say anything. What followed was an interesting sequence where the devil possessing the necromancer appeared to us and offered us anything we wanted within this vast treasure chamber, so long as we agreed to leave without attacking him. Some took gold, Paladin and Barbarian took weapons, but I asked the devil if I could have the dead necromancer's book. My druid had been a voracious bookworm the entire campaign, so while it was in character, it was a bit of a surprise. What I didn't know was that the book was where the devil was housed. I essentially got a demon book, and to prevent the rest of the party from trying to destroy it or talk my character out of it, the devil wiped the memories of the other party members to make them forget what loot I had chosen for myself. It was one of those few moments in the campaign where I had a moment of true character development and depth, and Barbarian had to ruin it by saying the entire time we were leaving that she was sure we were forgetting something, and that she had a funny feeling about leaving something because she just felt like something was off. She was trying to metagame and did so until the DM told her that she had to stop because her character didn't know her memory had been altered. I know it was our first time as a D&D group, as players and as a DM, but I was so frustrated with her that I vowed I would never play with her or the server again, because I didn't want to ruin the friendships we had out of character. I was an idiot and ended up playing with her again, and it ruined our friendship out of character. But that's another story with way more out of character drama than in-game shenanigans. End post. First, I think that second to last bit was a very wise choice. Not all good friends are good D&D friends. It's okay to have friends for different vibes. Aside from that, I feel like this is one of those stories that isn't a huge spectacle, but it's a good insight and still gives a lot of room for discussion in a way that's relatable to the newer side common player. It's very interesting to me as a GM for well over a decade to see what goes on in the minds of newer players. Anyways, as always, till next time.